The Doors were an American rock band formed in 1965 in Los Angeles, California, with vocalist Jim Morrison, keyboardist Ray Manzarek, drummer John Densmore, and guitarist Robbie Krieger. The band took its name from a title of Aldous Huxley's book The Doors of Perception, which itself was a reference to William Blake's quotation, "If the doors of perception were cleansed, everything would appear to man as if it were infinite." They were among the most controversial rock acts of the 1960s, due mostly to Morrison's wild poetic lyrics and charismatic but unpredictable stage persona.
Well, the Doors began their career in 1965. They were a local band in Los Angeles who played in coffee houses and small clubs. And through playing locally, they got a record deal with Elektra Records.
Robbie Krieger's amazing guitar skills led to the great track Light My Fire.
Well, Light My Fire was their first #1 single for both them and their record label. One of the big things about Light My Fire is the performance on Ed Sullivan, which brought a lot of fame to them, and a lot of music people in the industry kind of took note of them because they became a big player in the music field with that performance. Well, Morrison had a couple different instances where he got arrested. He got arrested in Connecticut, he collapsed on a stage in Amsterdam. In 1969, he got arrested in Florida for supposedly lewd and lascivious conduct. But the thing about Morrison was he exemplified the nature of the times, you know, the rebellious youth, and he kind of stood for them, and that's where he got most of his following from.
Since Break On Through was not very successful, the radio band turned to Light My Fire. The problem was the song was 7 minutes long, so producer Paul Rothschild cut it down to a 3-minute song. Light My Fire became the first single from Elektra Records to reach #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 singles chart, selling over 1 million copies. This was the first song written by Robbie Krieger and was the beginning of the band's success. On September 7th, 1967, the Doors gave a memorable performance of Light My Fire on the Ed Sullivan Show. Network executives asked that the word higher be replaced in favor of better. This was initially agreed to, but the song was still played in its original form, either because they never intended to comply with the request or Jim Morrison was nervous and forgot to make the change. Either way, Higher was sung on national TV. Ed Sullivan was furious and canceled 6 other shows that had been playing. The Doors spent several weeks in Los Angeles Sunset Studios recording their second album, Strange Days, experimenting with their new technology. Strange Days was the first Doors album ever recorded with a studio musician on bass. The Doors often used more than one bassist on the same album. On December 9th, 1967, the Doors performed the now infamous concert at New Haven Arena in Connecticut, which ended abruptly when Morrison was arrested by local police. Morrison became the first rock artist ever to be arrested during a performance. Morrison had been making out with a fan backstage in a bathroom shower before the concert when police happened upon them. Later throughout the performance, Morrison proceeded to go on a tirade to the audience, describing what had happened earlier and taunting the police surrounding the stage. Morrison was dragged off stage by police and charged with inciting a riot, indecency, and public obscenity.
I think these days, especially in the States, you have to be a politician or an assassin or something to really be a superstar.
Well, Jim started out taking acid. This is in the early days of the band. When he met Ray Manzarek in 1966, they met each other at film school in UCLA. Steven Spielberg was in that class. George Lucas was in that class. And in the 60s, there was a lot of experimentation with drugs. Jim Morrison was part of a Navy family. His dad was an admiral in the Navy, and so there wasn't a lot of stability in his life. And so they'd move from school to school, and he never really made any close ties to friends, so he was kind of a loner. But when he got to LA, and he became friends with Manzarek, who was an organist, they struck up a friendship, and Jim enjoyed Ray's playing, and Ray loved Jim's poetry. and his interest in German philosophy.
Jim Morrison never ceased to surprise the audience during his performance.
He also got in trouble on stage. He did a little striptease, which in today's culture I guess wouldn't be that big a deal. Back in 1967, 68, when you took your clothes off on stage, you got arrested. That happened to him in Connecticut and in Florida.
Jim Morrison also had an extremely bad drinking problem.
He made the transition. He had a scare, an overdose, in 1969, almost killed him. So that got him off the dope, and that had given him that kind of attractive look, very gaunt, thin look, because he used to be chunky. But once he got off the drugs and he started drinking, all his calories were from drinking, and he started gaining weight, and very quickly started losing his voice. If you listen to the last album, L.A. Woman, you can hear the coarseness in his voice. In fact, Ray Manzarek had said that he knew that would be Jim Morrison's last album because he wouldn't show up to recording sessions. They'd have to go get him. He was very unreliable. The relationship with his girlfriend was falling apart, and it was all because he became an alcoholic.
On March 1st, 1969, at the Dinner Key Auditorium, the Doors gave the most controversial performance of their career, one that nearly derailed the band. Morrison had been drinking all day and missed his flight to Miami. By the time he arrived, the concert was over an hour late in starting, and Morrison was overly fortified with alcohol, according to Ray Manzarek. Morrison had taunted the crowd with a message of both love and hate. On March 5th, the Dade County Sheriff's Office issued a warrant for Jim Morrison's arrest, claiming that he exposed his penis on stage and was drunk at the time of his performance. Throughout the recording of their next album, Morrison again found himself in trouble with the law. The Doors' fifth album was called by Rock Magazine, without a doubt, their ballsiest album yet. During the Doors' last public performance with Morrison, he apparently had a breakdown on stage, slamming the microphone numerous times into the stage floor. About that time, Morrison retired from performing. Morrison later moved to Paris and began to drink heavily and use other drugs. Morrison died on July 3, 1971. In the official account of his death, he was found dead in a Paris apartment bathtub. The cause of death was heart failure. The Doors continued to release 2 more albums before completely disbanding. The Doors had a great influence in later bands such as Nirvana.